I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. So this week is, it's going to be a busy one for me. I don't know what you've got going on. I suppose it's busy for you too. But I will be traveling down to Des Moines, Iowa, to attend the what is it called? I guess is it the Day on the Hill? So this is when school board members and public education folks attend different things at the State House, and it's an opportunity to discuss bills, study files, proposals, committees, things like that, with the legislators down in Des Moines. And I'm sure that every state does that, but here in Iowa, that's where I live. And so as a school board president, I will be traveling to Des Moines this week to have some conversations about some things that are on the legislative agenda for this 91st legislative session for the state of Iowa. We're going to talk about that. But first, let me bring you up to date on what it is that I did this past weekend. I'm pretty pleased with something that we were able to put together. I'm a member of something called the Waldorf Gridiron Club, and I'm the president of that. And the kid plays at Waldorf for football, and Jack does. And so I'm a Waldorf alum, and for the last few years, we've been pretty engaged with the Gridiron Club. And one of the things that has been one goal that we've had for quite some time is to create an awards ceremony for the football team that really is memorable, significant, and very special. And so that's what we did this year as a group. We've just got a great board that puts these things together, and we've done so much in the last year or two. It's been around for a few years, but the last couple of years we've really gained traction, raised money, been able to work well with the school, the university, the program, the athletic department, all of those things. And then this time we just wanted to, at the end of the year, celebrate the season. Even though they were 0-11, we wanted to make sure that they were recognized for their efforts, because it's a lot of work being a college athlete, and these kids give it their all. They put their heart into it, and regardless of how the game come out and the record ends up at the end of the season, it's important that we recognize their efforts. And so I think that that's good for recruiting. I think it's good for retention, and those things seem to be proving in the positive for Waldorf University, my alma mater. And we put this thing together. We created an awards program. We call it the Bullsies. One of the longest serving coach for Waldorf University was a guy named A. David Bolstorff. He came to the school as actually the campus chaplain. In 1965, served 41 years at Waldorf and was the football coach that whole time. He came in as assistant and shortly became the head coach, because the head coach, I think in 1966 or maybe it was 67, but somewhere in there, had a heart attack and survived the heart attack but could no longer coach. And then Dave became the head coach, and from there went through all of the changes that colleges go through. It was a 2-year college back then. It eventually became a 4-year college, and then it became a university. He transitioned through that whole process. He was there during the Vietnam War when my parents were there. My dad came back from Vietnam and attended Waldorf, met my mom, and the rest is history, so to speak. And then was there for some integration stuff. Not that private schools were really ever not integrated in Iowa, but that whole process in the 60s occurred while he was there, and he was very good about bringing in all kinds of talent from all over the place, and so on and so forth. And he personally survived some difficulties. His daughter had a pretty severe accident on New Year's Eve in 1980 that kept her in the hospital in Rochester for a few months. It was a quite serious deal. I was just a kid at the time. And then his youngest son was my age. We were great friends all the way through school. And later he passed away just a few years ago, rather suddenly and unexpectedly. And so he was retired from football at that time, but just a man who has experienced just a number of things as a chaplain, as a pastor for the Lutheran Church. Has gone through those changes in the LCA and just a variety of things, and a stalwart individual and somebody who is still to this day, he's 91 years old, very competent, very clear in his speaking. Did have the opportunity to see him this past fall when they dedicated the archway to the entrance to the field, which is named after him. It's called Bolstorff Field.
The man for whom the football field is named, Coach David Bolstorff.
Football is the greatest team sport that there is. You learn so much about life through the playing of football, if you give your all to it. You learn how to win, you learn how to lose. You learn how to live with one another. You learn how to do your job, like Belichick says. You learn how to get up when you get knocked down, just like the life we live in. So it's a great game and a great teacher. Life is not easy sometimes, and football is not easy sometimes, maybe a lot of the time. But if you learn how to give your all and play it correctly, you'll learn an awful lot about life and the living of life. If one is a Christian, you cannot separate life from faith or faith from life. You cannot do that and be authentic. People do, but they're not authentic. Because football players, they get stereotyped quite a bit. Don't give in to the stereotype. Be your own person. Be the person that God wants you to be. I've always said if you keep in touch with God, you can't see kind of where you're going, but when you look back, you can see where God's put your feet every single step of the way. It's not whether you end up as an NFL player. It's whether you end up as a good person, a good doctor, a good lawyer, a good teacher, a good whatever. That's what counts. Be the person that God wants you to be.
And so we thought it would be appropriate to have an award show in the ways that, the Oscars have a name, and the Emmys have a name, and the ESPYs have a name. And people that had known Dave Bolstorff affectionately called him Bolsey. And so that is what we decided to call our award. So at the end of the season now, and for hopefully many, many years to come, we will present the Bolsey Awards in January, so we can celebrate the season when the kids get back after their long break following. Waldorf is unique in that it takes a break just before Thanksgiving and they come back in January. So they get quite a long break, a couple of months there. And so it's fun to see the team all back together, and it's a great way to just celebrate them getting back in the classroom and in the weight room and preparing for the next season. And so we honored them with a variety of categories, and I was in charge of making the production what it was. So I can't do anything small. And so to me, it was just another show, and we had to put together a great presentation with lots of videos and lots of different presenters and introductions and introduction music and walk-up music for when they won their award and the nominees are, and then they open an envelope and all of that stuff. So it was a really great Saturday. I'm happy that it's over. I think it was a success, except for one thing. We continue to have problems. I am struggling to figure out how to be successful with the video side of things. We wanted to record it. I had it set up. I thought I had it figured out. I wasn't going to live stream it because I didn't trust necessarily that I was good enough to do all of that yet. And it should be simple, and it's not. And that's why you're still listening to me instead of seeing me. And so I will get it figured out. But man, we were like 10 or 15 minutes into the show, and we lost 3 of the 4 cameras, and who knows why. And so we just it's too bad. So we'll put something out for the parents, and it will be some sort of an idea of what happened. But unfortunately, we lost the video. So that's the only downside. Otherwise, it was a successful banquet, and I think the kids really appreciated it. And I think that the coaches really liked it, and the administrators. We had the president of the university, Bob Alsop, come and present some academic awards and be present for that and the meal and everything like that. So it was a great Saturday night. Big project to get up to it. Not quite as enormous as a full-on community theater production or anything like that, but it was definitely something that I was glad that I got to direct, put together, an MC. And I'm also happy that it's over. I'm just glad. I'm glad that hard work is done, and I can move on to other things. The last week or so, I've been building some things in my shop. I have a wood shop that has been like the center of the storm for the last 4 years now, since I retired, and we built the new barn. It's just the place where all of my tools sort of are collected. I've got things where I've got tool chests that I can put things away, and then I just haven't put them away, so everything's on top of them, and it's just been a mess. And I've been completing some things in the breezeway for my in-laws, and I was building some benches, and I decided, well, to build this bench, I need a little bigger bench in my shop. So then I started building that bench. I got that one built, and then I decided to build another one, and then I decided that I should probably clean up as I go, and then that led to the whole organization thing. I'm not quite done, still not quite done, but I think by the end of this week, once I get done with all these other things this week, I will be also done with that, which is great because I've got big projects planned, and I think there will be from then on. I will figure out this video thing so I can show you what it is that I'm up to. When I say that, we're building projects and building boys and doing these things, I want to tell you, I want to show you what life is like at Sunnyside a little bit. Granted, you're missing the exciting, building a garage for my in-laws and the breezeway and all of those projects, but don't worry, there's plenty more projects that we'll put out there. From what I understand, as I've been researching coming into the 21st century, finally, from this level of technology, that all of these 3 years of episodes that are all audio, now that they have transferred the Google podcasts over to YouTube completely. They did that last year. So now you can listen to this on YouTube. It just shows the placard of the whatever podcast you're listening to from Sunnyside Farm Studios, whether it's this one, the Sunnyside of Life, or the Gridiron Club podcast for Waldorf, or Mr. B's Dinner Party, which I also produce, and whatever it happens to be, they're all there at Sunnyside Farm Studios, channel on YouTube. So they're all there, but apparently when you have a lot of audio formatting, it does throw off your video formatting when that time does come. So it'll take me a while to gain some traction on YouTube, unless you decide to subscribe and on YouTube as well, and check that out. So it's all I don't know, metrics of some sort or other. I don't really understand the algorithms and how all that stuff works because I'm 50 now and I'm trying to figure it out. But always learning something new. So if you haven't checked it out, the Sunnyside Farm Studios channel on YouTube. Go ahead and do that. Subscribe. It does help. I guess it helps for live streaming too. So I learned that live streaming, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or X or whatever it happens to be, whatever format you decide to live stream on, Vimeo or what is it? I think it's whatever. All of these things have like kind of rules about how many subscribers you have, and in some cases you can only do half as many. You can do half as many more than you have subscribers to live stream. So if I wanted to live stream something and I've got 100 subscribers, then I can it'll only be open to 150 subscribers to view the live stream, I guess. Math. I don't quite understand it, but it does help. So it does help. Like when you give us a rating on Apple, and you give us a rating on whatever format you're listening to this as a podcast to show that you're subscribed to, you subscribe, and then you give it a rating, you give a thumbs up, whatever. That does help, and certainly that's the case on YouTube, which is probably why every YouTube host always says, smash that like button, blah, 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 blah. There's a reason for that. I guess it really does make a difference, and it helps appear in other ways. And don't worry about it. I'll figure it out, and maybe someday it will be hopefully material worth watching. Right now, hopefully it's material worth listening to. Well, let's talk about what it is for today, this week. Like I said, I'm going to be going down to Des Moines. I'm going to be visiting the state capitol, talking to legislators, and seeing if we can come to some common sense terms. In Iowa, the legislature is a supermajority for the Republican Party, which is fine. I'm a conservative. However, the Conservative Party, which is typically the Republicans, almost always, although there are other more conservative, very, very small fringe parties out there, they always said, I grew up as, in a Republican family, and, Republicans all around. And like I said, still very conservative, very free market, very libertarian in some ways. And then obviously Christian, conservative in every other way, in every other capacity. So for me, it's interesting to, have, the legislators and so to some degree local politicians, and I'm an elected official, although, it's nonpartisan when you're on a school board, which I think is good. Republicans always say that they are interested in government spending and bringing it down and being reasonable and efficient with government spending. And I think that is, some of the big ramp up and, the big news with the Doge, with Trump and on the federal government. And I'm kind of excited to see if some of that stuff does happen, because I agree that government can shrink. And that does feed my opinion and my understanding, economically speaking, how our state governments work and our local the county budgets and the civic budgets, et cetera, and the school board budget, how all that works. I think school boards, at least the one I'm associated with, are very focused on how we spend our money, and that we have to be looking forward a decade in advance to make sure that the teachers that we hire are the best teachers that we can get, and that they're going to stay with us so that we can retain them, and so that we can have a destination district where teachers want to work and live in our communities and raise families and be a part of our communities in a variety of ways. I think that our district does a very good job of that, and that is a lot of that has to do with how we manage our money. And so school boards in general spend a lot of time with finance and making sure that the different pots of money that we have are spent appropriately. And there are lots of rules, whereas a city has some home rule abilities, the counties have some home rule abilities. The school districts really don't. The legislature in Des Moines and in Iowa anyway, really have a chokehold on the school districts, public school districts, and so they are very interested in telling school districts what they can do, and of course when you have 100 representatives and 50 senators, so you have 150 ideas how that should be done, fed by two different parties, one in a supermajority and the other in a fairly reasonable minority. And then you've got all the different advocacy groups and everybody's got ideas, and some of these ideas are coming from outside of Iowa. So just kind of national groups, whether it's a conservative group, or they call themselves a conservative group, or a progressive group. Nationally, they're feeding into different state legislators ideas for bills that a lot of times aren't even written, but just, supported by and introduced by your local legislator.
And now, friends, we invite you all to join us in the church basement for a potluck lunch the ladies and Steve have prepared for us.
Marjorie, I see you brought your gelatin dessert again.
Yes, I did, Bernice. Do you like the bowl?
Well, I like the bowl, Marjorie. I'm just not a fan of the grapes in my gelatin dessert.
Well, lots of people have told me that they enjoy the grapes in the... Well, why do you keep calling it a gelatin dessert? Everyone calls it Jell-O. It's healthy.
Because that's the name of the brand. And there are laws restricting the use of name brands in situations like this. Also, it may not be healthy. It's pig bones. Besides, people shouldn't put grapes in gelatin desserts, Marjorie. Someone could choke. These grapes are enormous.
Oh, Bernice, you're so silly. You're such a hoot.
Silly. I'll see about that. Just wait until one of those little lambs swallows the giant grape. She's that perfectly fine gelatin dessert, and then we'll find out who is a hoot. Why, there ought to be a law.
Oh, excuse me, what did you say?
What? Where did you come from? Who are you?
Oh, I'm just your friendly local legislator who happened to be attending church this Sunday like I always do, as far as you know. Did you say something about a law?
I didn't think anyone heard me.
Well, I did.
Well, I just think that grapes and gelatin dessert are very dangerous, and they could, a little kid, one of these precious little angels. What would happen if they were to choke on a grape they didn't know was in the gelatin dessert? Who suspects there would be a giant grape in a gelatin dessert?
Oh, indeed. That is a problem. No one should have to suffer the consequences of stealthy grapes hidden in perfectly delicious Jell-O.
That's what I said, except I said gelatin dessert.
I'll tell you what, Bernice.
How do you know my name?
But important. I'm going to make a law for you, for all of us, to prevent people from slipping grapes into Jell-O.
Gelatin dessert. But, I don't know if that's really necessary. I was just kind of venting. Marjorie and I have gone back and forth about this in the past.
Oh, no. You were right to think there should be binding legislation enforceable by gunpoint, of course, that prevents dangerous shenanigans from potentially occurring, no matter how unlikely it may be. Even if it saves just one child's life in some parallel universe, it will certainly have been worth it. Would it not, Bernice?
I suppose so.
Oh, I hear you, Bernice. I hear you loud and clear. I'm going to take this to the Capitol for you.
Oh, my.
I may even call it Bernice's Law, if you don't mind.
Well, I kind of do. Don't. That's really not necessary.
Oh, it's done. Off to the Capitol I go.
Oh, dear.
Bernice, we're all out of Jell-O already, and no one's dead yet.
Gelatin dessert.
That's the process, I think, in every state. And that's important for people to be advocates for their interests, particularly their local interests. And when you have at that smaller level of government, the state level, where you have pretty good access to your local legislators, your reps and your senators, it is our duty, our responsibility to, as citizens, to stay aware of what it is that our government is up to and to hold them accountable, because they work for us. And it's temp jobs anyway. Those are not lifelong assignments, whether they're at the county level or they're at the state level or at the federal level. They weren't intended to be there for decades. It's a part-time job, and they'll make it a full-time job if they can, but it is something that is really not intended for them to do for their whole life.
it's important, though, for us as citizens to make sure that we are paying attention. And as a school board president, one of the things that we do is on a school board is we have legislative priorities. We determine as a board what our priorities for the year are, and then we submit that upward to our advocacy group. And there are multiple advocacy groups. There's School Board Association, there's Rural School District, there's the administrators. There's just lots of different lobbying organizations that all kind of work together to try to get the message of education, particularly public education, down to Des Moines. And in Iowa, for the last couple of years, maybe longer than that, there has been, it's not a war. I think that people are too prone to use the term war on a noun. It's a war. It's a war on terror. It's a war on women. It's a war on education. So a lot of disgruntled people in the state of Iowa have been saying that Iowa legislature, the Republicans particularly, have been making war on public education. And I don't think that that's the right term. There certainly is quite a bit of adversity, at the very least. Let's leave it at that. For the last couple of years, one thing that happened last year is that Iowa decided to take its state supplemental aid, which is the money that you get from the entire tax base from the legislature, pushed through the state of Iowa out to all of the different districts based on the number of students enrolled in each individual district. And it's weighted to some degree. So straightforward state supplemental aid, each kid is worth X amount of dollars, say, but for certain kids, special needs kids at different levels get a different weighting. So maybe it's, 1.25. So one times another, 25% or 50% or whatever it happens to be, because it takes more personnel and it takes a little bit more effort and money to do the education, provide the education for those for some kids, and so there's weighting involved with that. There's weighting for people that don't have English as a first language, and so there's some difficulties in the classroom for them. So you have to bring them up to speed, and so that takes a little bit more effort. And so there's weighting. So your enrollment then gets this weighted measure. You have your true enrollment, and then you have your weighted enrollment, and so that's how you get your money. Okay, so that's the same for every school district across the state of Iowa, and it's been that way for a long time. Last year, what they decided to do is allow state supplemental aid to go out first in bits, but then eventually everything to everyone who wants to take their kids out of public school and go and send them to a private school. Regardless of whether it's a religious school or a classical school or whatever it happens to be, it's not a public school. And I'm actually fine with that. The libertarian in me says that's fine. I can handle that. As a public school school board president, I can say we can compete. We can compete with private schools. In fact, it should be motivating for us as a school district. We should always attempt to be better and getting better. And if there's something that, if you're seeing a tremendous removal of students from your enrollment because people are deciding to either leave your district and open enroll into another public school, or they are leaving your school and going and enrolling into a private school, you should pay attention to that. And we should pay attention to that. We do pay attention to that. In our particular case, it is primarily when people leave our school, it's usually for open enrolling into another public school district, and that's usually another rural school district, and that's usually because of work of the parents or they're moving to another town. And so that makes sense. You just open enroll out to the next district or wherever it happens that you're going. We don't have very many kids in my district going to private schools, but we do have some. And that's fine. And then, of course, there's the whole, homeschooling situation, too. So all of these things, homeschooling, private school enrollment, all of that stuff does get rolled into what did get through the legislature and signed by the governor last year in Iowa. So Iowa is one of those states where you get state supplemental aid as a taxpayer for taking your kid out of the public school system and taking them and enrolling them into a private school, and to some degree, some benefits for homeschooling as well. Okay, I'm fine with that. It does not, it doesn't bother me because, like I said, we can compete. I know that there was just a lot of angst and anxiety, and there's a lot of signs across the state still that say things like, public dollars for public schools only. And I think that's a very simple and misguided, understandable, but misguided and not completely thoughtful argument. And it doesn't blend well with how I believe America should be, in the sense that we should be a free market system, and public education does have the corner on the market. Public education also has the ability to tax, which private schools do not have that ability. That's why they can have tuition. Public schools can't have tuition. We have to do everything through a tax base. So now everybody gets state supplemental aid. Private schools still have tuition, and public schools can still tax. They can levy taxes for all kinds of different things, and we do. That's part of every school district in the state of Iowa. So I'm not going to get into the financing part of how it all works, because there's lots of different pots of money, and there's lots of different this, that, and the other thing, and sharing agreements. And, you can use money for this, but you can't use money for that. You can put an extra penny or two on this, but you can't do this, and it has to be used for that. And there's just a lot of rules. Those rules are ultimately written by the Department of Education. And the Department of Education writes those rules because the legislators, whichever party they happen to be from, if the bill gets approved, that's what they want to see happen. And I assume that that's because their constituents are saying that that's what they want to see. However, you and I both know that that is not the way it works all the time, that sometimes that there are outside influences, whether it's strong outside entities, lobbying organizations, small groups of people that have a lot of money and they are advocating for a certain way of doing business, whatever it happens to be. It affects public education as well. And so we've seen that. And so sometimes legislators just go along with whatever, they happen to agree with it or whatever, but maybe they're agreeing with somebody who's just got a big checkbook. And maybe that's not the best thing for the communities that they represent. So that did happen.
You sure got to climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Des Moines. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just a bad idea. Folks back home mistakenly thought they wanted a law passed, so they called their local legislature. And he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out, or he had somebody else do it who was paid for that type of thing, and introduced me to the legislature, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I sit here and wait while a few key legislators discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those legislators arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably. Otherwise, I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Ooh, but it looks like I'm going to live. I go to the House of Representatives and then they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to Terrace Hill, where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the governor to sign. And if she signs me, then I'll be a law. I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole legislator says you should be a law, the governor can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the governor vetoes me, I have to go back to the legislature and they vote on me again. And by that time, I'm so old.
It's not easy to become a law, is it?
Ideally, I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
She signed you, Bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes. No more grapes and jello in this great state.
Now, as you know, we are not monetized. However, you can buy us a coffee. There'll be a little emblem that says you can support the show on whichever platform it is that you are listening to the Sunnyside of Life. And I would be darn honored if you bought me a coffee, so to speak. Or I think the emblem, I changed it to a beer, which seems, to be honest, probably more appropriate. Like my good buddy, Ryan Hall. Thanks, Ryan. So buy me a coffee, buy me a beer, whatever it is, and that helps support the show so we can continue to develop more and more great skits and have more and more great conversations just like this. And if you do, great. If you don't, that's just fine too. Just wanted to let you know. Now back to the show. So there are some things that I do like about and believe me, there's a slew of education bills that have been introduced since the legislators were sworn in at the beginning of the month. And there's a lot of them out there. Some of them are study bills. So you have a House study bill, you have a House study file, or a Senate study bill or Senate study file. These are things that could become law, but we want to send them to committee and we want to study it and we want to decide if it's a good idea or not. So if you see a study bill associated with something, don't get too wrapped around the axles about that. Sometimes those get promoted on social media as this is what they're going to do, and study bills don't always get that far. So it could just be a wild idea that somebody has, and it never really gets out of committee because it's dumb. But they study it just to make sure that the issue that's being addressed is that there's not more to it, or if that's actually a good solution, whatever the legislature has brought to the table. Just because a person is able to get elected to representative or Senate or governor or president of the United States doesn't mean that every idea that they have is good. In fact, that we know in many cases it is not good. So you hope that the collaborative process of our government does its job. But when these things go through, they do go through they get enacted and they go to the Department of Education, and sometimes they're clear how it should be done, and sometimes they leave it up to the Department of Education to figure out. And that's actually what happens most of the time. So when I go to Des Moines this week, I'm going to advocate for some things, and then I'm going to absolutely hope to change some minds about some other things. So just I'm only going to speak specifically about a couple of things. Idea-wise, for me, I would like to make it clear to the legislators that we need, as rural school districts, which is what most school districts are in the state of Iowa, but every school district ought to be able to work together with other school districts to expand sharing positions. In a variety. Right now, you can share superintendents. You can share business officers or the secretary of the school board. So you can share what they're called SBOs. You can share certain administrator positions. There are certain things that you can share. But then there are a lot of things that you can't share, and I think that should be expanded so that a school district can basically share almost anything that they want with another school district. Say, for example, a business teacher, or a chemistry teacher, or a French teacher, whatever. If you want to teach those things, you should be, and you can't fill your number of classes in a day to justify having that particular teacher all to yourself in a small school district, that you should be able to share that with another school district and make that happen. And you can do that to some degree, and school districts do that. They do have some ability to do those things. But the difference is that there is state money that is available for certain shared positions and not others. And so I think that's just a smart way of letting pretty wise and money-minded local managers of their school districts on their school boards and in their superintendent offices to be able to do those things. And it would be better if that were a little easier to do when we had a little bit more money. So I think more sharing as the future goes is better, particularly as we've seen the AEA. Also, another thing that happened last year, the area education agencies, again, not a war. They were under attack. I think a lot of people mistook what was happening in the transition of the AEA as an attack on the therapists that do such great work in the schools. And that's not what the legislators were actually going after. I'm not apologizing for the legislators necessarily. Maybe they could have done it a little bit better, especially in how they communicated it to the public. It just it was the governor's thing. She pushed it and just jammed it down the throat right away in the beginning of January last year into the legislature, and then left the legislators to kind of have to try to clean it up and then deal with the constituents everywhere. And I've been to lots of those just those sensing sessions and the legislative, meetings when the legislators come and visit. And man, they get attacked. They were getting attacked hot and heavy with the AEA. But I'll tell you, the AEA was very top heavy, and it wasn't the therapists that was the problem. It wasn't the technicians that were the problem. They were doing great work. They are doing great work. The problem is how the money was being spent and how it was flowing through the school districts directly to the AEA, and what the AEA was paying its managers. They had a lot of managers, and they were making a lot of six-figure incomes, and they weren't therapists. Maybe they started as therapists, but they became managers, and it got to be pretty top-heavy. And so they did the same thing the legislature did a few years ago. As you remember, talking to Colonel Todd Jacobus, who's the commandant of the Iowa Veterans Administration, they did that to the VA in Iowa a few years ago, and it was very successful. They had lots of different bosses and lots of different money being paid to lots of different managers, and nothing getting done efficiently. Now they have one commandant, and he oversees all of the different departments, and they were able to consolidate some things, and they were able to be more efficient and ultimately serve veterans in the state of Iowa much, much better. And that was the idea, I think, the test run for the AEA. And now school districts have the ability to take that money that used to flow through to go to the AEA. They can keep it if they want, and they can do with that money what they want. So they can replace services. They can come up with their own. They can contract private companies and on and on and on. It wasn't a perfect deal. And I'm not opposed to the AEA, but I am opposed to the loudest voices in last year's argument were the managers of the AEA, for good reason. They were going to be out of a job, and they're not the therapists. They weren't the ones that were providing the services in the schools that we do need, and they do provide a lot of. They were also doing a lot of things that was ultimately outside of what the AEA was intended to do, which was initially intended to take care of our special needs kids. And they do a great job with that, hands down. But not maybe some of the other things, technology, curriculum, some of these other things. They really kind of expanded into printing services. They did all kinds of things. And it's kind of a one-stop shop, and they did a good job of being friends with administrators, and the next thing you know, they're all on the same side, and we're all fighting for maybe not the most efficient system. So when all of that happened last year, that was right in the middle of, again, when I went to the Hill last year, and I didn't have an issue with the I understood what was happening, and I didn't have an issue with what was happening with state school or state supplemental aid for students. Everybody that lives in Iowa that sends a kid to a school is a taxpayer, and you should be able to take your kid wherever you want to go. And you're an Iowan, and you're a taxpayer, and your taxes should be able to be used towards your kid's education. And the truth of the matter is that people that have kids that are school age probably aren't the biggest taxpayers in the state anyway, to be honest with you. A lot of our taxes do come from property taxes. We have income tax, but that's been reduced pretty significantly in the last couple of years by the state of Iowa, which I love that. I don't like paying income taxes either. But a lot of it is property taxes. And the truth is that the kid that, the young family that's got, maybe 2-3 kids in elementary school, their taxable base for their property is probably not that significant. More than likely, not in the state of Iowa. The people that are paying for the kids to go to school through those property taxes in the state of Iowa, their kids are probably not in school anymore. Or if they are, they're graduating, or you know what I mean? So by the time you get to that point in your life as an adult and a parent, when you're a young parent, you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of property, you don't have a lot of value financially. So your taxable, what you're paying in taxes isn't paying for your one kid to even go through school, to go through school in state supplemental aid. That's the best. That's the brass tacks. In most cases. Now there are some very wealthy families, but they probably own a lot of land and they're paying more. So it is kind of distributed that way. And as we get older, we acquire our assets. Our property values go up. We maybe own a home, maybe we own some other land, whatever it happens to be. And so maybe we own a business or something like that. And the next thing you know, we're paying a lot of taxes to the state. So we're paying for maybe as we get older, more children than we even had in our own home when we were young. And that's who's paying for kids to go to school. So the public schools last year seemed to really look at that money as if it was theirs, like they were entitled to it. And I didn't look at it that way. Not state supplemental aid. I didn't look at it that way because, again, we have the power to tax. And if you want to be a really high tax district and spend a lot of money on stuff, you can do that. But you have to answer to your local constituents as a school board. And so the private schools, they can't tax, so they don't have that avenue of revenue, but they can set their tuition. And that's how they were before they were receiving state supplemental aid, and they still have tuition. And tuition is whatever they want it to be. And off of that tuition, that's their whole budget and whatever support they get from whatever supporting organization. So if it's a Catholic school, they're getting some support from the Catholic Church and a Lutheran school, et cetera, et cetera. If it's a Christian school of some sort, they're probably getting money from churches and organizations like that, in addition to their tuition. All of those things are still in place for the private schools. And I'm fine with that. When the state supplemental aid last year now opened up this year for kids to go to a private school, parents to make that choice, I feel that's within the parents' right, and that they are taxpayers in the state of Iowa. They can certainly do that. However, our own representative in the state, in my neck of the woods here, who also happens to be the House Majority Whip, and he's been on the show a couple of times, a friend of mine, Henry Stone, he has produced a bill, and it's since he's the Majority Whip, it happens to be House File 1, so it's the first one of many on the list for this year's legislative bills, and it's gone through committee already, at which he's on that subcommittee for education, and of course they recommend it. It is House File 1, and it is the brass tacks of it are, I'm just going to simplify this, it's mandated acceptance by public schools of private school activity refugees. That's probably not how he would put it. In fact, that isn't how he put it in House File 1. The official title is the participation in extracurricular interscholastic athletic contests or competitions provided by public schools. Now, when Henry was on my show the first time, a couple of years ago, he was the Republicans now are very proud of the word shall. They have learned in their minds, I don't know if they never attended an English class in their life or what happened, but they've learned the difference between shall and may. And that when you say shall, they have to. And they're very proud of that. So now they are including shall as the primary active verb in most of their legislation. It's not suggestive. The Republicans, who are historically claimed to be for free markets, for competition, free enterprise, small government, not much government overreach. They don't like it. They like decentralized government. All of that is baloney. The Republicans are full of baloney just as much as the Democrats are. They are, when it comes to public schools, they are 100% for centralized government. And the Politburo in Des Moines in the supermajority is absolutely for centralized power and oversight of all public schools. They're not too worried about the private schools. In fact, that's one of our complaints in the public school system, is that they don't put the same rules. They don't have the same requirements, the same oversight for the private schools that they do for the public schools. And they can't. There's a legal separation there. And the public schools, they are saying, some people are saying that the private schools need to have the same rules and regulations and oversight as the public schools. And I am saying the opposite, but similar. It's, to me, the public schools should have the same lack of oversight that the private schools get to have. Because I don't know why a church board of deacons or whoever runs the Christian schools or the private schools, or I don't know why those boards are more trustworthy than elected officials in communities across the state of Iowa, in the minds of the legislators. If we can give the money to the private schools for state supplemental aid without the oversight through the Department of Education that the public schools have to follow, then let's just make it fair and equal, and don't put more rules and regulations, Republicans, on private schools, because we don't like rules and regulations, allegedly, right? Yeah, right. They love doing it to public schools. And I think that the public schools should be free of that, just in the same way that they are. And if that could mean that some public schools would be run by knucklehead boards, and they could run themselves into the dirt, that's too bad. Sorry, that's the advantage of home rule, I would say. We don't have that in public education in Iowa, and I wish we did, because I do think that is truly competition. But so they're not too concerned about that. They're also not concerned about who's on these boards. They have rules about who can be on the boards for public schools, but you could be some, I don't know, nefarious character in California and be on a board in a private school here in Iowa. I don't know how that works. But it does. And I don't think that's right either. I think you should have to live in the state, and preferably in the place where the school exists. You shouldn't be in another school district. You should be at least near the one that you're in, and you have to be a resident of the state that you're in. If you're a charter board member, or if you're a board member of any of these private schools, that's what I think. Again, but because I think that just makes sense. That's representation, right? You wouldn't want to be taxed, and of course, private schools can't tax, but private schools can raise tuition prices, and what they think tuition should be in New York for private schools is vastly different than what we think fair tuition here is in the market in Iowa. So it just makes sense, in my opinion. Anyway, this is all my opinion, isn't it? So anyway, Henry, like I said, he's a friend of mine, and I understand where he's coming from, because he has a kid, I think, or he has interests anyway in a school nearby the Forest City School District where we live, and it's a private school, and it's small. And this bill says that the board of directors of a school district, like me, shall, there's the word, they found English, shall allow a student who resides within the school district. So if you are living in Forest City, you're part of the Forest City School District, and who is enrolled in a non-public school. So they're going to another school. They've taken their new SSA money that they can get from last year's legislation, and they've said to the public school district in which they live, you're not good enough for me. The parents have said to the public school, you are not good enough for my child. I don't agree with your values. I don't agree. In small town Iowa, I find this a silly argument. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, because as a Christian, the cloistering effect of Christians is detrimental to the commission of Christ. Christ doesn't need a defender by the sword or by the pen. We feel compelled to do that because we love Christ as Christians. And so but God is fine with or without us. And so it seems to me that a lot of Christians have it in their faithful brains that it would be better if you shrouded and cloistered our children and even our flocks together away from the outside world. But we are as we know, as faithful Christians, that we are not of this world. Once we have given ourselves to Christ, we have been born again, and we are slaves to Christ. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. And the truth of the gospel and the power of Christ and the value and the power of the Holy Spirit protects us and our children who we are raising to be faithful, to live in a world that is against Christ. It is the world is the Antichrist, right? So like we're in a world, but we're not of it. But there are many parents, and this is their God-given right, or at least, in my opinion, the freedom of an American citizen to be able to pick whatever school their kid wants to go to. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, already established that. But you have rejected your public school. And in our state, most schools are small, and they're from small towns, relatively speaking. It's probably most school districts in Iowa are the only school in town, and they maybe be dozens of miles away from the next available private school option. But they are all around. They're speckled around, and they've been around for a long time. And I think that's great. But when you are a member of a community and you thumb your nose at your neighbors, your fellow citizens of that community, and you say essentially by enrolling your child into a private school, which is your right, and I commend you for doing it. And I love the fact that private schools can be schools of faith, and they can pray, and they have chapel, and they have all of these wonderful Christian things. I can't guarantee that any of the kids are necessarily more Christian or are necessarily better saved, if that's a thing, than the kids that are faithful, family members of faithful, churchgoers, whatever it happens to be in the public school. But I love that about the private school. I love it. I wish we could do more of that in the public school. We can't. There are certain things that people get wrapped around the axles about. And there is a little bit of a separation that we can't advocate for any particular faith in the public school, in the American public school system. So that's why, private schools, particularly ones of faith, exist. I think that's great. And I think that they should be able to use state supplemental aid. However, my dear majority leader, I don't think it's cool for a kid to be able no, I don't think it's cool for the state, the overreaching, diabolical arm of the law, to reach out into every district in the state of Iowa and say, you shall allow a student who lives in your district but is enrolled in a non-public school to participate immediately in any extracurricular, interscholastic, athletic contest or competition that is provided by the school district, but that is not provided by the non-public school, pursuant to the terms of an agreement between the board of directors of the school district and the authorities, whoever they are, of the private schools, in charge of the non-public school that provides for the eligibility of the student. The board of directors of the school district shall allow a student who resides, here's where it's funny to me, because this, I think, actually personally affects him. The board of directors of a school district, say like Forest City, shall allow a student who resides within a contiguous school district and who is enrolled in a non-public school, say in a town like, Clear Lake, which is also a contiguous school district, public school district with bordering Forest City, to participate in the same way in these extracurricular, interscholastic, athletic contest or competition that is provided by the school district, but is not provided by the non-public school or the student's school district of residence. So what that means is that if you live in Forest City and you go to a private school in another town that is in another school district, and that school district's town doesn't have the event or the activity that you want, but you do, then our school district by law would be forced to take the kid First, let me say this. Look, we're not opposed to giving kids the opportunity to participate in our athletic programs at Forest City. We do this with homeschool kids. We have sharing agreements in the same way with other community school districts surrounding us, because there are smaller districts around us and they don't have everything we do. We're already doing that. But what Henry is saying in House File 1 is that parents who decide to take their kid into a private school because the public school isn't good enough for their kid in their mind still get to have their cake and eat it too. Like by law, my school district has to take your kid who you have said is too good for my district, except for the fact that this place that we're going doesn't have a football team. And we really need a football team, or we need a wrestling team, or we need a golf team, or we need something like that. And my answer as school board president is, that's not my problem. I'm not saying that we won't take your kid, but I'm saying I have a big problem with a Republican who is a part of a party that pretends they're for small government and they do not want government overreach. I have a big problem with them telling me and my district that I have to take the kid who family has thumbed their nose at the citizens and the constituents of my school district. I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but I'm saying that's up to us, not to you. And if you don't like it, then raise tuition at your private school, because they can't tax. So if they want to build a track or a football field or an arena, or they need to buy more buses so they can travel, or whatever it is they want to do, that's your problem. That's their growth and development problem, not my constituents' problem, not my school district's problem. And I don't think that I should have to, and granted, in Forest City, it'd be very small numbers. So it's not even a big deal. We are able to afford it. And like I said, we would probably take everybody. But I don't like the legislator telling me that I shall do anything. Sorry, we're an elected body. We represent this one town. We represent this one town and this one school district. And actually, we have more than that. We've got, 2 or 3 other towns that are part of our school district now. And for whatever reason, these families have decided that's not good enough. They're going to send their kids somewhere else. And I say, wonderful. And that place can create these programs for your special child. If they can't afford to do that, or they can't field a team, that's part of the decision-making process when a family decides to leave one school district to go to a non-public school district. That's how that works. So I will be talking to my friend Henry this week about his precious baby bill, House File 1. And I will be continuing to lambast this entire idea, because it's ridiculous. Now, he does think that he's really taking care of the school districts by saying, look, we understand it might cost a little bit more money. You got to buy uniforms, equipment. We get it. So you can charge an activity fee for these kids coming in that you have to take, but you can't charge them more than you would any of your students. And I'm like, au contraire, sweet one. That isn't how this works at all. If you want to be a part of my team and you're in another school and you're not open enrolled from another public school district, no. If I have to buy a whole new uniform for you, I might have to charge you more. And he's trying to protect that group of people who chose a school that doesn't have all the cool stuff that the public schools do, so that their kids can still participate in all the cool stuff, probably where all their friends are, because their family has taken them away from their neighborhood, from the kids they've grown up with, and put them into a private school, which is fine. And like I said, I like those private schools, but you got to come up with your own stuff. That's the deal. You got the big win for the money from the state, which I agree with, not a problem. But don't try to come in the back door and say, but we don't have all the cool stuff. Not my problem. Not my problem, Chip. You made that choice. And life has consequences. And your kids, at some point, precious baby Ang's going to have to learn that. So I am opposed to House File 1 pretty significantly. And it is going to get, it's gone through committee. It's going to go, it's been recommended. So it's going to get up there. So if you feel the same way I do, if you think it is ridiculous that we should be compelled by law as public school districts to take the people who rejected us, to take the refugees, the athletic refugees of non-public schools who receive public funds because they don't have the programs, then what you should do is contact your legislature, wherever you may be, and do so quickly, because this one, he's the majority whip. It's going to move quick. And so I'll let him know this week, and I will let him know that I'm going to continue to think that this is a silly idea. And it seems, in all honesty, kind of self-serving, considering the circumstances. So I don't like that. I don't like it. And I think that's important for everyone to know what is happening and to read into it. The rest of the bill you can read. You can read any bill that's out there. The Iowa legislature is really good at showing you all the bills that are out. You can just go to the legislative.gov, legis.iowa.gov, and you can pretty much look up anything. You can use keywords. You can see what's on the docket right now. You can see what's been proposed in the House and the Senate, and I encourage you to do so. Now, the last thing is I'm going to suggest I do support one thing. I'm going to say yes to the bell-to-bell no-cell idea. This is kind of a national thing that's kind of it's been a success on the East Coast. It's been a success on the West Coast. It's been a success in different states. It's pursued by really bipartisan lobbying groups. The idea that the kids don't need cell phones during the day at all. And so it rhymes. So it's pretty slick. Cell, bell to bell, no cell. From the start of the day to the end of the day at school. Yeah, don't need your cell phone. Some schools are doing this on their own. The governor has bought into this. It's just kind of like the AEA thing that she pushed on last year. It's going to come to fruition. I support that. Now, the only people that the kids aren't going to like it. But I didn't grow up with a cell phone in my hand. So I think, I had a pretty good education and I could focus on what was happening. And also I could build relationships with my friends, and talk to each other at the lunch table. And schools have different rules. Classrooms have different rules, different policies and all of that. And again, maybe this is overreaching. And so I maybe am a hypocrite here in this regard. However, I'm not a hypocrite in the sense that I would enact this as a school board member through our district on my own. In fact, I brought it up a while ago, but the superintendent, who is really good at staying in tune with what's happening down in Des Moines, was aware of this, that it was part of the governor's agenda. And so because there's no need to recreate the wheel or have to change policy once the Department of Education gets this through to us probably this summer, then we're just going to wait on it. But I would have enacted this if I could have with support with the other members of our board for the same reason. Kids don't need a cell phone throughout the day. Now, kids aren't going to like it, but they can't vote. So also they'll get used to it. And, it's a good thing for them. The ones who are going to complain the most are the parents who think that their babies need a way to communicate in the certain circumstance of an emergency. And what your definition of an emergency and my definition of an emergency are probably two wildly different things depending on your background. So if you think that remembering a dentist appointment is an emergency because you couldn't, instruct your child the night before or the morning of that they did have a dental appointment later in the day, that is not an emergency. You can call the school office. You can say, hey, he's got an emergency. You can call that. That's what it's going to make. It's going to make the school secretaries a little crazy for a while because the phones are going to be ringing. Can you tell my baby that I need him to go to grandma's house after? Sure. They'll do that. They did that, when I was growing up. And the school secretaries got a lot of work on their plate. I'm not, but I think it's better for the kids to not have the distraction of the cell phones, the mobile phones, any of that stuff. They don't need that in during the school day. That's my stance, and I'm going with it. Bell to bell, no cell. And if you're a parent that thinks that those little things are truly emergencies, contact the school office. If it's a situation like a big Red Dawn situation, then as a parent, your other responsibility, besides, obviously engaging them in a walk of faith and good character, you're also supposed to teach your children how to survive. I mean, so if you haven't watched Red Dawn, sit down with your children and watch Red Dawn. I prefer the 1980s version. I guess there was one that came out in Australia in the 2000s sometime, and I've seen them both. I prefer the older one. Patrick Swayze, stuff like that. Leah Thompson, so on and so forth. All ridiculous. But I tell you what, when I was in junior high, having watched Red Dawn, knowing that the commies are coming from Cuba for some reason, and China, and Russia, they were going to try to take over these rural places. We were going to go Wolverine on them. So in these school situations that may hopefully never occur, you need to have your kids be ready for that too. And then they know to go grab their phone, which is probably in their locker, and head for the hills. Wolverine. All right, folks, that's what I'm going to be doing this week, bringing my wicked sense of humor and my opinions based on what I've been reading that the legislators are up to down to Des Moines. You should do the same thing. I know that House files and Senate files just aren't very sexy reading, and a lot of us don't read as much as we should anyway, and maybe there's other things that you would rather read first, but trust me, it's our job as citizens and as parents and as just community members in general. Citizens of the United States of America. Got to keep attention, got to pay attention, and keep our legislators on their toes. And they love hearing from you. They do. Email them. You can call them. I recommend email. All of their emails are available. They do read them. I will say this. Our legislators, regardless of their party, regardless of how much crap they're taking, they do read their emails. However, as I've said before on the show, if you're going to advocate for something, make sure that you know what you're talking about, and make sure that you are writing a letter that comes from you and your own words, and don't just copy and paste something that you got from an advocacy group. Even if you agree with what the advocacy group is saying, their talking points are their talking points. And you need to, at the very least, do a little bit of work and change their talking points, the words, into your own. And keep it short. Express your point in a paragraph or two at the most. And make sure that they have a way to contact you, because they will. They'll reply. And I appreciate that every time that I do this. And believe me, I will continue to be doing this. So I hope that this week I will have the opportunity to be the sunny side of some legislators' lives. And I hope you have the chance to be the sunny side of someone else's life.
Be the person God wants you to be.
I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of the Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.